Welcome to Fight the Devil, episode number 10. My name is Luke Martino, and joining me is a man who made a very brief cameo appearance in my last episode with the Mentos Squad. He sits in the Mentos Partners Club alongside Elenia, Nick, and Ashley. He arguably has the most going on out of anyone I've come across in 2025. We will get to that surprise in a moment, but right here, I want to introduce fellow gamer and hardcore wrestling fan, Jordan. Welcome, Jordan.
Hi, thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
Yeah, no, I appreciate you. Having wrapped up at 1 in the morning, and here we are at 11 a.m. Doing the podcast together.
Yeah, work is tough. All I do really is throw bags, but it's still tough somehow.
Yeah, so explain how that works. It's like a bit of a shoulder workout for you?
Yeah, look, pretty much, it's hard to explain, but I feel like everyone knows this if you've been on a plane. When you land and you just like look out the window and you see those people picking up like the containers and stuff full of bags. It's pretty much my job. But then like obviously it's not automatic, so I have to like take those containers back to like a baggage room and just put all the bags on a belt. It's actually more grueling than what I thought it would be, only because if you think about like for example the Melbourne airport, there's like 800 flights like every day that come in and out. So I'm doing like 3 or 4 flights like every hour. And it's like hundreds of bags every flight. So I'm probably throwing like 5 to like 600 bags like every hour, and it's just pretty intense.
It sounds like you've gained some muscle in those hours.
Oh, dude, I wish, man. I'm eating so much.
That's your gym workout done.
Yeah, literally.
Happy to hear. Look, someone's got to do the heavy lifting, and that's yourself and your good crew of teammates that work alongside you. Is that right?
Yeah, exactly. If I had no team, I'd be absolutely screwed.
Yeah, it's all about the people you work with, regardless of the job, I believe. And you got your people that are positive, and you get you through the shift.
Exactly.
And that's the main thing. And sometimes you can even snooze on your shift, from what you told me last time.
Yeah, so essentially with obviously planes aren't coming in every second. So if you finish a flight, you might have like 20 minutes and you can just do anything. It's not like there's something to do. You just kind of just do nothing. In saying that, you kind of do need to take it's encouraged that you relax in between and just do nothing, because at the end of the day, like, it is pretty intense. So if you were to like keep working in between, you'd probably end up just hurting yourself or whatnot.
Yeah.
But it's pretty good because like at the end of the day, I don't have like a scheduled break at work necessarily, but I have lots of breaks. Yeah.
Yeah, good to hear. Pace yourself.
Yeah.
All right, Jordan. First off, I want to just say massive congratulations to your recent engagement with the lovely Rach.
Thank you. You.
That was in December, and you celebrated in Queensland. How was that?
Yeah, that was good. It was a nerve-wracking experience, I guess. Like, I thought the whole time, even before, like obviously beforehand, knowing what I was going to do and whatnot, it felt really normal. I was just like, yeah, like this is what's going to happen, and you know, it'll be good and whatnot. And then when we actually got up to Queensland and like the whole week, I was just so nervous the whole time to do it. Even though I knew, like, it's not like I knew that, oh, I don't know what they're going to say kind of thing. It was just more like, it was like I wanted a perfect moment kind of thing. And I feel like it took a few days to kind of realize that perfect, like, movie-like moment, like, isn't, not to say it's not real, but that's an extremely rare thing. And so I kind of just need to do, you know, like what we would do kind of thing. It's instead of thinking of like I'm having it to be perfect, I'm like, what would we like? And then that was it kind of after that.
Yeah, that is perfect to you, to the both of you. I can recall feeling a similar level of nerves going into my engagement, my proposal. A man waits their whole life to propose to the future partner, and you just want it to be perfect because it's something that'll be remembered and stuck around and be retold for generations. So yeah, I do remember feeling the same, Jordan. So not to worry, you're not alone, and I'm sure it was a perfect moment in itself with between you and Rach.
Yeah, 100%.
And just to clarify, because I know Rach is 25 and yourself?
I'm also 25. I turned 26 at the end of the year.
Oh, excellent. That's really, really good. Good stuff. Very happy for you guys, for the both of you. And look, before we specify and unpack the surprise of the century, let's give the Fight the Devil listeners a bit more insight into who you are. So please, Jordan, describe yourself.
Ugh. Um, how do I describe myself? Look, to be honest, in when I do interviews and I get asked this question, I never know how to answer it. And now that this isn't an interview, and I'm like, I should answer this more honestly, I still don't know how to answer it. And what I mean, and what I mean is that at the end of the day, I feel like I'm just like a guy going through life. That's that's is ultimately what it is. Obviously, my
Yeah.
life is different to others and whatnot, but like I feel like at the end of the day, most people are just going through the same thing or very similar thing. It's just like
Yeah.
packaged up differently, right? But
Yeah, it is.
to describe myself, well, I've had a bit of a weird life, I guess. And like I've only realized recently that I feel like my life's actually like not as normal as what people have normally had. Uh,
Yeah.
I have spent a completely abnormal amount of time playing video games for a lot of my life and doing it as a job for a decent amount of my life.
All right.
Um, what else? What else am I? I'm just I'm like a hermit crab. I like to stay inside, just like watch TV and play my games and talk to my fiance and I live a simple life. At one point in time, I guess I was that like party animal, going out and whatever, but now it's more just chill. I'm a chill guy, you know?
I appreciate your honesty, Jordan. What is the biggest thing that stumps many that have come on the podcast is that I usually prepare it better by saying, this question is reserved for interviews, but we want to share who we really are on a platform like this podcast because we're not having to impress anyone. You don't have to, impress me because we're mates and you just say how it is, Jordan. So no, I really appreciate it. You made me laugh with that, and we all love the fact that you're chill, and hoping to get to know you more as time goes on because I've taken a liking to you, man, and I enjoy that you're a chill dude.
Thank you, man. Yeah, I feel like maybe another thing, I guess my humor, I like to just make people laugh, but like, I guess not intentionally, it just happens, but yeah.
Yeah, story of my life.
Yeah. I feel like people are just laughing at me half the time, and I'm just like, oh well, it's fine to laugh. You
Oh,
take it.
the people are entertained, and yeah, as long as you're friends, like friendship is most important. So that's good, Jordan. Well, got a couple other questions. You just summed up yourself pretty well. How would you describe your childhood?
Oh, honestly, it it's pretty interesting in terms of, I guess, I've been on like both spectrums of life, in my opinion. And what I mean is that when I was very young, my family were pretty poor. Like
Okay.
at the end of the day, my parents they wanted to live a certain way, and they wanted to have their own house, and they wanted to get married and all that stuff. So they did it pretty young when they were like 20 and 21. That kind of included them just struggling, 'cause they made it happen. Don't get me wrong, but like my dad worked like 3 jobs, mom worked like 2 jobs. Like it was all over the place for a long time. And
Wow.
so at the start, it was very just, I guess, everyone was in and out all the time, and I was just kind of at home, just doing my thing. And then we kind of, my parents, not to say that they didn't know how to raise me, because that's like not right. It's more like it was really tough for them to kind of like, I was a very cheeky kid, and so it was really hard to like look after me and then also be able to like do everything that they need to do. So
Oh,
that's kind of how I got put into like the whole video game kind of world. Like I got to maybe like 6 or 7, and my parents kind of just planted a PlayStation in front of me, and they're like, play and stay there and don't do anything. And I was like, okay. And so I just would play games all day so they could actually like do stuff and whatnot that they need to do. But my childhood also was a bit like I was saying before, I was a pretty, when I say cheeky, I was just like a little demon. And,
ah,
you know, that came with like traditional disciplinary actions. I had like, it was pretty rough. We'll put it like that. Uh,
okay.
and so I had like both ends where it was like, we were poor, and my parents were doing what they could, and then eventually they kind of like, moved their way up in works and whatnot, and so they were able to like earn more money, and then we were pretty well off at one point. And like it was a very interesting dynamic because by the time they got to the point where they were like well off, I
Okay.
I was older, and it was like harder to like, now they wanted to like do things together and be around and whatever. But at that point, I was so like enthralled and encapsulated in playing games. Like that was my life. So it was like hard to connect with me after that. But at the same time, I had a goal. Like I was working towards a goal. It's not like I just played video games to play video games. I had like a big goal in mind. I wanted to like do it as a job and whatever. But yeah,
Wow.
it was an interesting childhood, I guess. Like not as rough as some people that I've known, but also it wasn't as smooth sailing as others.
Good to summarize and good to reflect on it now that you're 25 years old and look at it from a broad point of view. I'd like to know, what cheeky antics are we talking about, Jordan?
So I used to do this thing when I was like maybe like 7 or 8, where I would just kind of go out on the street and get into random people's cars,
Oh, no.
and just be like, "Oh, just take me wherever." And like,
Oh, no.
I was just a little maniac. I don't know what I was thinking, or things like around where I live, there are a few like cliff faces, and I had this obsession with trying to climb them. And obviously back then, there was no like, not to say there wasn't harnesses and stuff. Of course there was, but I was like a 10-year-old kid, so like I just kind of was climbing them without anything. And then one day ultimately I fell off. I fell off one, and I got very lucky, like how my body landed and stuff, that I survived. Just doing a bunch of dumb stuff, and like I had a bike, and like I would go out after school, and I wouldn't come back till like 11:30 p.m. Just like riding
No.
wherever, and
Oh,
like
wow.
it's just when I got left to my own devices, I would do the dumbest things. Put it like that, and it's just so that's the cheeky things I used to do.
Mate, did your parents like lose their mind if you came back at 11:30 thinking they might not see you again?
Yeah, absolutely, like 100%. Like it was. Like, they would explain, like, why they were so worried, but obviously in my mind, I must have thought, like, "But, like, I'm fine." Like, every time I would make it home, so I'm like, "But I'm fine."
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
nothing's gonna happen. But obviously, like, we don't know that. Like, no one knows that. Like, now I'm older, I understand, like, you have no idea what could happen, and unfortunately, the world, in my opinion anyway, I think there is more bad in the world than good, and you don't
Yeah.
see it as often, obviously, because people aren't going to show it's more front facing. But
Yeah.
people like someone could have easily just taken me and just never come back, do whatever. But
Oh, fucking oath. Yeah.
um, but yeah, I never thought about that back then. It was just more like I'm just like living life, and don't get me wrong, like I feel like it's like kids need to be kids, but like I feel like I was just a little bit extreme. Some people like to go out in the front yard and play cricket with their neighbors and stuff, and it's like that's like more being a kid. You smash a window, it's like, oh no, like whatever. But it is what it is. But not like going up to random strangers and telling them to take you and stuff. Like that was crazy. I don't understand what I was thinking, but
Yeah.
yeah.
And it wasn't like an escapism. Like, well, I know that perhaps you have or haven't told me, but it doesn't sound like it was escapism. It's just like the adventures of a kid at this stage,
Yeah.
right?
No, it wasn't like it wasn't like 'cause I wanted to get out of my situation. I was, like, perfectly happy. It was just more like I was just like, I thought it was fun. I don't know.
Yeah.
It was something that I enjoyed. I
Yeah.
think anyway. I can't exactly remember, but there was no thought of, like, wanting to actually leave home and never come back.
Yeah, no, for sure. And you know what? Like, it wouldn't have been far off to what kids may have been doing 30, 40, 50 years ago when it comes to exploring. And I don't know about the strangers in the car part, but certainly the bike riding and just exploring the areas around you at a time where kids had more freedom to do that and there weren't such things to worry about because maybe there weren't as many like news breakers about bad people out in the street at night. Kids are probably doing that all the time, and there was definitely a lot more freedom. So you're probably just living the kid adventure dream, but there's a lot more to worry about in this day and age. So we're very happy that you're all still well and good, Jordan, and nothing bad ever happened.
Mm, thank you, thank you.
How was the dynamic like in your house, family home?
It was very traditional. I do believe that obviously you end up like becoming, you get molded by how you were raised, kind of thing. But
Yeah,
I do agree with it where it's like you had a role to play. And what I mean is that like my dad like worked. He just worked and worked and worked to put food on the table. And then like
yeah,
my mum took care of like all the home duties and all that stuff. Like that was the roles that they played. Like it's not like they were forced into those positions. It's more just like, okay, someone needs to do this and then someone needs to do that. And so dad chose the
yeah,
work one and mum chose to stay at home. And it's like that now I still agree with, like, I still agree with, I don't necessarily agree with the fact that it's like, oh, it has to be the male that works and the woman that stays home kind of thing. Nah, like either or
yeah.
can do it. But I do
Oh, yeah.
believe that at the end of the day, like, especially if you have children, like, unfortunately, like daycare and stuff was like way too expensive back then, and it's still too expensive right now. And so it's just like someone needs to stay home. Like it is what it is, right? Obviously, if you have support like grandparents and whatever, you can use them. But at the end of the day, they didn't really have that much, so they just did what they had to do. But that was kind of how it was. So I saw my mum a lot at home, most of the time, and I would see my dad for like 2-3 hours at home, like every night, and
Right.
then that was it, kind of thing. Because he was just always working. But
Yeah, okay.
that was that was like the dynamic kind of thing. Like I was the youngest child, so I have one sibling, a sister, and she's older. But
Yeah,
my parents were very focused on her only because they wanted her to set the example for me to like follow. That's how they thought. They're like,
right.
if the eldest is like smart and work focused and school focused and stuff, like then our son will want to do the same. But in reality, it didn't really work out that way at all because like my sister and I were never really like super close. Like we were close, but we weren't like really, really close. So I just kind of like she did her thing, and like they would make her like kind of do all that stuff, and then I would just do my thing. Like I never really paid attention.
Yeah,
Um,
right.
a lot of my upbringing was on gaming, like playing games. Like that was like most of my upbringing. At a certain point, for a good like 5 to 10 years, 95% of my time at home was looking at a screen playing games because like that's just like what kept me inside and not doing stupid stuff and whatever. But yeah.
Yeah, okay, that's just, to manage the cheeky antics and given your parents are, working so often and told me earlier that they didn't have the grandparents available to kind of look out for you and have someone else in the house. So it sounds like that was a best fix for you. It sounded like a solution that worked, but
Yeah.
what impact did your cousins have? Did you have like aunts and uncles as well that would play a role in your life?
I don't know necessarily about play a role, but I have a big family, like a very big family. Like my dad is like one of like 10. And so there's a lot of people. And don't get me wrong, our family, like we are very, like I said, they're very traditional. So that includes being like extremely family oriented. So effectively, like every single weekend of my whole entire life from when I was like 2 years old to like 20, we would go to someone's house on the weekend, whether it was, one of my uncles, aunties, or one of my cousins, because a lot of my cousins are a lot older than I am and a lot younger as well. Anyway, so it was just one of those things where it was very huge on family. Now, I don't think anyone was necessarily like super influential in my family
Yeah.
in the aspect of I wanted to be like them. However, there was a lot of people in my family where they influenced me in the aspect of I don't want to be like them. Like it was the opposite. I'm like, okay, like this is how this person is and I don't want to be like that. So I'm just going to like, lead my life this way instead. One of those things is a lot of my family are very, and I definitely catch myself. I don't catch myself being like this. It's more like my fiance catches me being like this, and it's really hard. But a lot of my uncles and aunties are very pessimistic people. Like,
Oh, no.
no matter what it is, like it could be the most like, surefire thing that something's going to happen or whatever, and they'll still sow the seeds of doubt like into your mind kind of thing. And like
So bad.
it was really tough. Like anything I wanted to do, it was like always scrutinized or it was always the downside of it, and it was just never like, oh, that would be cool, or that would be fun, or that would be awesome. Like it was just always like,
Yeah.
oh, this is gonna suck, and what about this, and what about that, and it's just like, I used to just get psyched out a lot of doing things because like the doubt or the pessimism. And unfortunately, like I've tried my best to not be pessimistic, but even now, like there's still things like I'll be having conversations with friends or my fiance or whatever, and they'll bring up an idea, and I will just see only the negatives of it instead of any
Yeah.
positive. And it's like, oh, like it's such a hard mindset to get out of, but
Yeah.
I am grateful for it in a way because like whenever someone's pessimistic now, I can like really tell, like it's pretty obvious, like to me anyway.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, this is like how this person is thinking. But I do wish that like I had people that were, I don't know, more ambitious. My like
Yeah.
at the end of the day, like my parents, like especially my own parents, like their number one thing was just like don't take risks. Like don't take risks, just do it like do the do the thing that's going to work because taking risks is just going to end up like you're going to end up just falling flat, you know? So
Yeah.
like for them they were like instead of for example like investing in a company or something, they're like dad was like I'll work like 3 jobs instead because I know that I'll earn this amount of money and we'll be able to do that with this
Yeah.
instead of like making his own business and like doing whatever the hell, you know? Um
Yeah.
And it's just like, sure, don't get me wrong, it's not a bad way to think, but also like what could have been the upside of taking that risk? You know, if you had your own business and it worked out, it could have been, you know, you could have been really well off. Like you could have been really successful. And it's funny because he ended up being a successful like person in a company, you know, 20 years down the line after. And then he
Hey.
resigned and ended up making his own business once he had enough money to kind of like not worry about it. And then his
Mm.
business was really successful. So I'm like, dude, like you could have done this like 20 years ago and you still knew what you knew back then now. Like you probably would have been just as successful back then as now. But like it is what it is. You only know what you know kind of thing. But yeah, I just feel like I wish I had people in my life that took more risks and stuff because then I would have felt the same when I was, which we'll get onto at some point, but like the whole gaming thing, like that was a massive risk and it was so hard to like take that risk. It took years and years and years to be able to even just be like, all right, I'm going to do it.
Mm.
You know, and I wish like back then, like if I had someone that was like, yeah, you should do it. Like you should do it. You know, maybe that little push was like all I needed kind of thing. But anyway, it is what it is.
No, I'm glad you've identified pessimism because it's one of the biggest devils. This is fight the devil here, and I've endured lots and lots of pessimism myself within my own immediate family. That's been the biggest downer and the biggest killjoy of my life. And I do everything in my life that goes against pessimism. And I'm sure I would hope to have that first impression on you about me is the fact that there's nothing that will bring me down. And there could be countless things that go my way. And I'll always choose to look at the brighter side of life, analogy of the half glass full as opposed to half glass empty. I just cannot tolerate pessimism. And that works against me sometimes because I've gone to situations where I refuse to see negatives and only see positives, and then it blows up in my face because I didn't see the bad personality traits in someone, and then I've gone through years of wasting my time on a relationship when if I balanced it out, then then I would have saved myself lots of depression. So
Yeah.
it can be a really tricky one. There's no real good way to either be fully positive or fully negative. I'll definitely fall into the fully positive category. Meanwhile, it sounds like you've grown up with a fully negative and don't take risks and don't do this and don't do that. So I definitely would say that moderation is key, and that you want to have the best of both, assessing the good and bad. And we can only get better with time at being a better judge of character through those levels of optimism and pessimism.
Yeah, exactly.
So, one last question about childhood, and then maybe we can delve into that whole starting up the gaming side of things. What did it take to make you a happy kid?
Well, what did it take? Honestly, a PlayStation and a chocolate cake was pretty much what I needed, Like that was most of my childhood. Like my parents used to like. I feel like, don't get me wrong, like when I was much younger, I was like very skinny kind of thing. But then at a certain point, when I started like playing the games a lot, and they bought me the PlayStation and stuff, they would just buy me whatever. Like I used to like be really stubborn, and I just wouldn't eat if it was something that I didn't like. And I
Oh,
feel
yeah.
like at a certain point, they kind of realized they're like, oh, this kid just likes sweet foods. So instead of thinking, and not to blame them because I would probably have done the same, but instead of thinking like, okay, what's something sweet but still healthy that they can give me, they were like, fuck it, and they would just give me ice cream and then chocolate cake and all that kind of stuff because like, at least he's eating, right? But
Oh, no.
obviously, it wasn't like all the time, but it was just more like pretty much every weekend. I was eating like chocolate cake and ice cream, playing games.
Oh, well.
And that's all it really took to make me happy. Like at the end of the day, like I would go to school every day. I would do school knowing the fact that I could come home and my parents would like let me play the PlayStation, And I think it's interesting because I know a lot of people where their parents wouldn't let them play PlayStation until like they finish their homework or something like that. But like I was like I said, I was a very devilish child, so I like wouldn't go to school. They'd have to use the whole oh, you can play games thing if you go to school. Like that was
Oh,
the it was like one step backwards because if I would go to school, like my parents would drop me off, I'd just leave. Like I wouldn't stay. If I knew I couldn't play
alright.
PlayStation after, I just wouldn't stay.
Right. Okay.
Um,
Well,
but yeah.
what games were so enthralling and so engaging that that made you say, "No, I will not go to school unless I can play this, and this."
You know what's so funny about this is that I've got my old PlayStation and stuff, and I pulled it out maybe like 5, 6 years ago now. But all my like I have my old save files and stuff. Every game that I played, I barely got through like the first like 5 seconds of the game. Like I must have
Oh.
just been like hopping on and just running around, and I just really enjoyed just running around doing nothing. Like
Oh, yeah.
like I
Yep.
barely got through like the story of the game, if that makes any sense. Because I just didn't understand what was going on, obviously, when I was younger. I was pretty stupid. But at a certain point, from when I was really young, like yeah, 4. Oh, and to preface, from when I was literally born to like 4 years old, I had like hand me down like Game Boys and stuff. So
Oh, yeah.
I was like playing Pokemon when I was like 2 and stuff.
Ah,
So
sick.
I'd always played games, but when I was a lot younger, like yeah, I just didn't really like I would play my Game Boy when I was out with my parents somewhere or whatever. They'll be like, sit down on this chair and play your Game Boy. Like don't do anything dumb. And it's like yeah, all right.
Yeah.
But then like once I got the PlayStation, it kind of changed a bit because I was like, okay, like this is like a whole, like I would like play like games like Ratchet and Clank and
Yeah.
like Spyro, like games where like you
Yeah.
could like lose yourself in it kind of thing. And then I just like play all day. And then one game that I was absolutely obsessed with, and this was like the start of my competitive, like I didn't know this at the time, but my competitive itch when it came to playing games definitely started with this game called Gran Turismo. It was Gran Turismo 3 was the
That's
name
the
of it.
racing car game, isn't it?
The racing car game
Yep.
for PlayStation 2. Anyway,
Yes. Yes.
I would play that game like religiously all the time, and I would play this one track. It was a NASCAR track, so it was just an oval, and just trying so hard to get a better and better time. And the reason why is because every day when my dad would come home from work, come home at like 5 o'clock, he'd walk in, and our living room is like right there when you walk in, and he would see me, and he'd sit down, and he'd plug his controller in, and he would just beat he beat me so bad. He just destroyed me in every race,
Wow.
over and over and over.
Wow.
And he never let me win, ever let me.
Wow.
And I remember one day, like my mum was like, "Why don't you like let him win?" kind of thing. And he's like, "Why? Like, what's that gonna teach him if I just let him win?"
Yeah.
And fair enough, I understand, but that definitely like I would spend so much time after school before dad came home just practicing that track over and over and over and over. And then I remember like maybe 3 or 4 years later, he finally came home from work and I beat him in a race and I was so excited.
That's
And like he didn't want to play after that. He was just like he's like, all right, like like he's like you finally like kind of gotten better. Like I don't want to play. And I was like, fair enough. Um, But yeah, that was definitely the start of like that whole gaming thing. But that's what consumed a lot of my time. And then when I got to high school, probably maybe year 6, I was 12. I had birthday money, and my parents were really against getting me like they weren't going to buy me an Xbox 360 or a PS3. They weren't going to do it.
All right.
Mainly because they couldn't afford it, but 2, they were like, you should be like going outside and playing sports and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So what
Which
I
is fair
decided
enough.
to do was my school bus went straight to a shopping center after school. Like I went past one. I took my birthday money. I went to the shopping center, and none of the staff or anything stopped me, but I just bought myself an Xbox 360 with my birthday money.
Hey. All right.
Anyway, obviously brought that home, and I didn't know this at the time, but like back then you had to like pay for, well, you probably still do, but you had to like pay for like the online play and whatever. But it like
Yeah.
came with this Xbox, so I had like a month free, and
Oh, sick.
it also came free with the game Halo. It was Halo 4 at the time. And I'd played Halo 3 before and Halo Reach on like Xboxes with my friends and stuff. But now this was like my own Xbox. Anyway, so I immediately obviously just started playing online, and my parents like one day, probably like a week later, they're like, this kid has been spending a lot of his time in his room. Like he doesn't really play. Like I hadn't, they're like, what is he doing? And then they came in and they caught me on the Xbox, and I was like, oh shit. And they took it away for a little bit, but they ended up giving it back because like their mindset was like, wow, if he's really like that adamant on having this Xbox, like he went and bought it himself, like fair enough, like let him play kind of thing. So yeah, so a lot of my time was spent playing like Halo and Call of Duty when I got to like my like younger teen years.
Yeah, I know those were very popular games. Halo and the Call of Duty were ones that just had kids hooked on these PlayStations for hours. But I could never really find the appeal to be enthralled for that long. Plus, my parents had time limits anyway, so it was like an hour a day, and an hour, not even an hour a day. It was like an hour on Saturday and Sunday, and that was it. So I had to just cram in as much good stuff as I wanted, and didn't have the capacity to kind of roam around for long periods of time. But I do relate to what you're talking about when it comes to not having clocked the game or anything, but just spending so much time screwing around and with it without doing the chapters. I think one of my favorite games relating to that was like Spider-Man 2 on PlayStation.
Oh yeah, great game.
Yeah, swinging around in New York City.
That's all I did.
Going to the very tippy top of the Empire State Building.
Yeah.
And come crashing down, splat, you're dead.
Literally.
It was such a long fall.
And I'd always be like, oh, like I wonder if I can run on the ground. But I remember like you couldn't actually, like if you went to the ground, you just died. Like it was like what? But
You jump off, like free fall.
yeah, if you like went to the ground, like at least when I was playing the Spider-Man 3 game on PlayStation, I'm pretty sure I remember like if you ran on the ground, it like wouldn't let you like. You were meant to like always be on buildings and then swinging and stuff. Like your character would just die. And I never understood why I would die. Like I did the same thing. Like I try to get to the ground and I just always splat. That was good fun.
No, yeah, Spider-Man's were the sickest. The Tobey Maguire franchise. Safe with me. Just drive a broken our mirror so our past won't look so tempting.